The Woods Runner. Summaries by Gary Paulsen. Part 1. Green. The Forest, 1776. Chapter 1. Setting, Forest. Characters, Samuel. Mood, thoughtful. Samuel is a 13-year-old boy who loves exploring the forest near his family's cabin. He likes being in the forest more than reading books. He knows the forest well, the sights, smells, and sounds. He had the opportunity to shoot a deer, but he decided not to. He was thinking about the news he heard the night before. A war was happening in the east. He lives in the west. Communication, page 12. The fastest form of travel in 1776 were ships that could travel 100 to 200 miles per day with enough wind for weeks on end. Horses could travel 30 to 40 miles per day, but not for long periods of time. Wagons could travel 100 miles in a 24-hour day by switching horses every 10 to 15 miles, but only on good roads. A man could walk 20 to 30 miles in a day, depending on the land, weather, and shoes. It could take 5 to 6 days for information to travel just 10 miles if carried by travelers on foot. Information was carried by hand and transferred from person to person on paper, or, in most cases, word of mouth. Chapter 2. Setting, Samuel's home. Characters, Isaac, Samuel's parents, Olin and Abigail, Samuel, the Clarks, the Overtons, and the Harrises. Mood, nervous. A man named Isaac comes to Samuel's home to talk with his parents. He tells them about the war. More people are moving west to get away from the war. Other people come to Samuel's home. They all worry about the war, but don't know what to do. They decide to wait and see what happens. Frontier Life, page 17. Land was easy to find back then. Families could own hundreds to thousands of acres just by claiming it. There were lots of trees that needed to be cut in order to clear the land for farming and building villages. Each tree had to be cut down with an axe, cut into smaller pieces, then moved. Next, they had to dig out the stump with a handmade shovel, which could take weeks. If lucky, one might find a clearing left from beavers, who cleared it to make a dam and left after their food source was depleted. Chapter 3. Setting, Forest. Characters, Samuel. Mood, nervous and sensing danger. Samuel goes out to the forest to hunt for a bear. He is far from home, 8 miles. He sees smoke in the air. He knows it is way bigger than a campfire. He is scared that the war is close to his home and his family is in danger. He needs to get home fast. He runs home in the dark. Part 2. Red. War, 1776. Weapons, pages 25 and 26. Purchasing a rifle required saving up money for a year or more, and a whole year's wages, to get a gun from one of the rare gunsmiths located perhaps miles away. A rifle was typically the only weapon rebels had to use against the Loyalists in the war. British soldiers used the Brown Bess musket, which shot bullets at 700 to 800 feet per second. The gun was extremely inaccurate due to its design and could only be used effectively within about 50 yards. It was common to aim at one soldier and hit another soldier running 4 feet to the side. Each British soldier also had a bayonet on the end of the barrel to be used as a weapon in close contact. The British also had small field cannons that fired plain round balls, exploding shells, and grape shot. Grape shot was made up of round musket balls packed down into the cannon and shot out like a shotgun, spraying musket balls everywhere. Grape shot was very effective when facing large groups of soldiers because it could kill many at one time. Chapter 4. Setting, Frontier. Characters, Samuel. Mood, sad. When Samuel makes it to his home, he sees that all of the houses are burned down. He sees the bodies of his friends and neighbors on the ground. He doesn't find his parents, though. He buries his friends and prays for them. He is very upset and goes to bed, set on finding his parents the next day. Americans, pages 32 and 33. The American Army consisted of 3 parts. The Continental Army, or regular army, was equipped with weapons similar to the British, muskets and bayonets, as well as tomahawks. Then you had the volunteer militia, farmers, and others. They were used as support during battles as needed, but were not as dependable or steady due to lack of training. They had muskets with bayonets, but also rifles that were good for shooting long range. Then there were the Rangers, small groups of trained soldiers. They used rifles that had higher rates of accuracy compared to muskets, therefore being more effective. Chapter 5. Setting, the frontier to attacker's path. Characters, Samuel. Mood, ready and knowing. Samuel is very skillful in tracking animals. He can tell if a track was a deer, bear, or squirrel. He can tell if the animal is moving fast or slow. He can also tell why the animal is moving. He is determined to find his parents' tracks. He sleeps through the night and wakes up early the next day. Samuel finds his parents' tracks, along with the footprints of a few soldiers and horses. He tries to figure out how far away they are. He follows the tracks, and they lead him to a settlement. The British, page 40. The British Army was poorly trained for battle, paid very little, often going months without pay. They were poorly cared for. The wounded were virtually ignored and allowed to die alone unless a friend could help. They were poorly fed. They had salt beef, dried peas, and tea were what they typically carried with them to eat. They were also poorly treated. They would be tied to a wagon wheel and flogged until their back was shredded for even the slightest infraction. When soldiers from England were sent to war with the colonies, they were told to settle their affairs and make a proper will because they would probably be killed during battle. Chapter 6. Setting: Attacker's Path / Draper's Crossing. Characters: Samuel and Old Bobby. Mood: sad, determined, trying to stay focused. Samuel buries more people at the next settlement. He follows the tracks. The tracks lead to some cabins, and he finds an old man named Old Bobby. The old man sings a song while he buries the bodies. He tells Samuel that they came at dark. He is not far behind. Samuel keeps going. The World, page 46. The Revolutionary War became like a world war. Native Americans fought on both sides. The Navy from Spain supported the colonies. Germany sent the Hessians to help the British. The French were strong allies to the colonies. England was so distracted by the French in Europe, they couldn't focus on the American problem. Chapter 7. Setting: A clearing. Characters: Samuel, a group of captives, officers, and Indians. Mood: angry, cautious. Samuel has been on the run for 40 hours and is hungry and thirsty. He eats some corn. As he goes to get a drink of water from a creek, he hears two Indians talking. After they leave, he continues down the trail. The trail led him to a camp where the British soldiers and Indians were staying. He spots captives by the campfire, and he thinks his parents are with the group. Warfare, page 52. The Wall of British Steel. This was the British procedure when fighting. 2 to 3 rows of men would start towards the enemy. The first row would fire and then move back to reload, while the next line stepped forward to fire. Then the third row would step forward to fire, then reload while the first row again fired after reloading their weapons. This rolling volley was a type of mass firepower. Once the rows of men got close to the enemy, they would start screaming and charge with bayonets aimed at the enemy. Many times, American soldiers turned and ran from the British Army out of fear. Chapter 8. Setting: the camp. Characters: Samuel, Indians, soldiers, and rebels. Mood: fearless. Later that night, Samuel hears shots being fired from outside the camp. Samuel is confused at first, but then realizes that the soldiers and Indians are being attacked. He decides to join in on the attack so that he can get his family back. Before he could join, the 2 Indians he saw earlier snuck up behind him. Samuel shot one, and the other one hit him in the forehead with a tomahawk. Wounds, page 56. Untreated battle wounds often led to gangrene. This causes the body to rot away, turning green first, then black, due to infection traveling through the body. Antibiotics were not yet available, so the solution was usually amputation. Doctors would recognize gangrene based on smell for an accurate diagnosis. If the patient did not benefit from amputation, they would use maggots to eat away the damaged tissue and infection. If neither option was available, the person would be left to die. Chapter 9. Setting: Coop's Camp. Characters: Samuel and Coop. Mood: confused, curious. Samuel wakes up in a strange place. He finds out he is being taken care of by a man named Coop for 6 days, almost 7. They talk about what happened back at the camp as Samuel eats some food. Samuel falls asleep as he thinks about all the questions he has for Coop. American Spirit, page 65. Although the American army was poorly trained, led, and fed, they still took comfort in fighting on home soil, and usually had much higher morale than the British. The Americans were often outnumbered and fought with inferior equipment, but their spirit and motivation had an enormous effect, and they took the phrase, "morale is to fighting as 4 is to 1," to heart on the battlefield. Chapter 10. Setting: Coop's Camp. Characters: Samuel, Coop, and some rebels. Mood: tired. Samuel wakes up feeling a little better after getting hit in the head. The men pack everything up and leave camp to go fight the soldiers and Indians. They travel slowly with an ox. While traveling, Samuel learns why the Indians are helping the soldiers. He wonders what happened to his parents. He worries he's going too slow and needs to go faster to find them. Hessians, page 73. The British used soldiers from Germany called Hessians. While these soldiers did well in combat, they had such savage, atrocious behavior and committed war crimes so far beyond civilized behavior, such as bayoneting unarmed captives who had surrendered, including soldiers, farmers, women, children, and infants. They became known as little more than beasts and were treated as such. Chapter 11. Setting: the Clark's farm. Characters: Samuel, Annie Clark, Caleb, and Ma Clark, and the Hessians. Mood: relaxed, then scared. Samuel leaves the group so that he can go faster. He finds a barn and a chicken. A girl named Annie gave him a chicken. Her dad invited Samuel to eat supper with them. He finds out his mom and dad were there 2 to 3 days ago. After Samuel leaves, he sees Annie's mom and dad killed by the Hessians. Annie runs away. He goes to find Annie and his parents. Part 3. Green. New York, 1776. War orphans, page 87. Children who lost their parents during the war were war orphans. They often suffered from nightmares and sleeping problems, headaches, stomach aches, anger, irritability, and anxiety. Severely traumatized children would become withdrawn, appearing numb and unresponsive, and sometimes becoming mute. After the war, many orphans, if they were not taken in by family, grew up in institutions. Adoptions were very rare. Chapter 12. Setting: near Annie's house. Characters: Samuel and Annie Clark. Mood: grim and sad. Samuel finds Annie crying in the bushes. She is deeply sad and stays near to him. They escape together and hide in the woods as they travel to New York City. Samuel is angry about the war and wants to fight back, but he knows he can't. They travel for days, avoiding people and searching for food. Samuel does not trust anyone. He shoots a deer and they eat it. He is determined to find his parents, but he doesn't know how. He feels alone against the world, but he won't give up. Civilian deaths, page 93. The number of civilian deaths have always been underreported in wars and nearly impossible to verify. Most are forced to guess at the numbers because birth and death certificates, church records, tax rolls, and emigration documents were often destroyed. The true numbers in many cases are never counted in order to hide them from a country's own people as well as the enemy. More civilians were killed once mass weapons like cannons and guns were developed. Chapter 13. Setting: on the road to New York City. Characters: Samuel, Annie, Abner, officers, and Abner's dogs. Mood: cautious. Samuel and Annie are on the road to New York City to find Samuel's parents. They meet Abner, a kind tinker who saves them from British soldiers. Abner is an older man who wears sewn together rags and carries junk in his wagon. Abner's dog warns Abner about the danger, and he lies to protect Samuel and Annie. They get in the back of his wagon. New York City, page 102. New York is where prisoners of the British troops were held. By the end of 1776, more than 5,000 prisoners were in New York, with a total population of 25,000, so more than 20% were prisoners. There was only one prison in New York, so the British held their prisoners in warehouse buildings or on ships in the harbor. The ships were built to hold 350 people, but they kept over 1,000 prisoners at a time. Instead of toilets, they had to use buckets, which would fill up fast and easily could spill out onto the floor. Disease was spreading rampant. In the beginning of the war, 5 to 6 prisoners would die per day on the ships. By the end of the war, more Americans died while prisoners than during combat. Chapter 14. Setting: on the road to New York City in Abner's wagon. Characters: Samuel, Annie, Abner, and Abner's dogs. Mood: curious. Samuel, Annie, and Abner are still in the wagon going to New York City. Samuel tries to find out why Abner is helping them. Abner says it's because he wants to do what is right and he doesn't like the soldiers. Abner helps deliver messages and helps people who are in need. On their way, they see a family and wounded soldiers. Covert communication, page 110. Both armies disguised their communications so they could not be read easily if the messages were read by their enemies. The secret codes with letters and words were often easily broken. They tried using mathematical codes, but it was too complex. Invisible inks that could be made visible with heat or a series of chemicals, as well as messages hidden in pamphlets and almanacs, were other ways to ensure the security of important information. Chapter 15. Setting: Micah and Martha's house. Characters: Samuel, Annie, Abner, Abner's dogs, Micah, and Martha. Mood: happy and curious. Abner, Samuel, and Annie travel to New York. They stop at a farm owned by Micah and Martha. Micah helps Abner sharpen tools, and they have dinner together. Abner sends a message with a pigeon. Samuel suspects that Abner and Micah are hiding something. They sleep in the barn for the night. Civilian intelligence, page 121. Normal civilians and spies carried out the most important American intelligence operations of the Revolutionary War. Men and women who regularly came into contact with the British, such as farmers and merchants, fed important information to the American armies throughout the war. Some patriots even posed as loyalists to gather information from supporters of the king, collecting detailed facts about British military operations and defenses, where they were getting supplies from, and battle plans. Chapter 16. Setting: New Jersey and New York. Characters: Samuel, Abner, Matthew, and Samuel's mother. Mood: secretive. They arrive in New Jersey. Abner and Samuel take a boat across. Abner's friend, Matthew, helps get them a boat. They walk fast to find a prison. Samuel runs into his mom. She tells them that she is working at a house and that Samuel's dad is in a prison. Abner tells Samuel's mom to give her husband a message. They plan to rescue him at midnight. Prisoners of the British, page 131. During the war, at least 16 British ships were left abandoned after being damaged and sat in the waters off the shores of New York City to be used as prisons. Over 10,000 prisoners died of intentional neglect, starvation, and untreated disease. Their bodies were tossed into the water or buried in shallow graves by fellow prisoners. Chapter 17. Setting: Matthew's boat and Old Sugar Mill. Characters: Samuel, Abner, Matthew, and Samuel's parents, Olin and Abigail. Mood: somewhat excited. It is dark and rainy. Samuel and Abner sneak to the sugar mill to rescue Samuel's dad. Samuel hits the guard in the head with a brick. Abner unlocks the door. They grab Samuel's dad and mom and find Matthew and his boat. While riding the boat, Matthew gives Samuel's dad some food. Samuel tells his mom and dad about Annie. She is now part of their family. Treatment of prisoners of war, page 140. Prisoners were given 1 cup of water per day. They were only given food in the mornings, and most of it was inedible, typically leftover food from England that was old, stale, and most of the time, rotten. It was not until the 19th century that captors were expected to feed prisoners. During the Revolutionary War, their own army, government, and families attempted to provide for the prisoners. Chapter 18. Setting: Through the Forest to Philadelphia. Characters: Samuel, his parents, Annie, Matthew, and Abner. Mood: determined. Samuel and his family travel with Abner in his wagon. After some time, they must now travel on their own to Philadelphia and stay away from the soldiers along the way. Samuel leads his weak mom and dad and Annie through the forest. His mother sees how much he has changed and is glad he is with them. British behavior, page 151. While trying to regain control of the colonists, the British adopted what was later called a fire and sword strategy rather than a hearts and minds policy. This means that rather than trying to be kind and persuade the rebels, but instead they destroyed homes, towns, and warehouses. They burned plantations, crops, and killed livestock. They stole from houses and stores without regard to law or justice or the well-being of people they encountered. Chapter 19. Setting: forest. Characters: Samuel, Annie, Samuel's parents, rebels, and British soldiers. Mood: scared, then safe. They continue walking through the forest. His father is weak and needs meat. Samuel kills a raccoon for the family to eat. They keep moving and hiding from people. They see British soldiers. Samuel kills one soldier, and the rebels kill the other soldiers. The family is saved. The rebels give them a ride on horses to Philadelphia. Prologue. After living in Philadelphia for 3 years, Samuel feels restless. His mom and dad teach at a school for orphans. He wants to help others like he was helped, so he goes back to the war zone. He helps soldiers by hunting for meat, fixing equipment, and healing the sick. When his friend Coop dies, Samuel goes back to the forest where his journey began. He hopes the war is over, but it's not. Samuel finds peace in the quiet forest.